Great. Well, thanks very much for joining, guys. And as I mentioned just previously, my name is Charlie Connor. I'm a business analyst at Sales Methods, and welcome to one of our monthly training sessions for OrgChartPlus. So as I said, these run monthly, and what we're going to do is we're going to just give you a pretty thorough overview of the tool, just kind of a typical training session, and then what we would like to do is we'd really like to get some feedback from you guys as well. So if we're going through things that you might want to hear more of, or if there's certain things that you felt that I haven't gone through enough, my email's on the screen at the moment and I'll put it up at the end. But if you wanted to send me some feedback for future training sessions, something that you might think would be a good idea moving forward, then we'd be more than grateful if you could share that with us as well. So for the purposes of today, I'm obviously just going to take you through the tool itself. So if we dive in now, I shall open up Salesforce. So hopefully you can all see my screen. And what I've got open here is I've got an account open in our demo org in Salesforce. So OrgChartPlus sits within your accounts and opportunities in Salesforce. And one of the things that I'll mention straight away is that the tool is completely native on the Salesforce platform. So what does that mean? That means that in terms of all the database changes that you make within the tool, all those write back to Salesforce, and then it goes the other way as well, in that all the changes you make in Salesforce write back to the tool. So the databases are completely in sync. You don't have to worry about any duplications or anything like that. Everything you're doing will match up in Salesforce and in OrgChartPlus as well. So as I said, OrgChartPlus sits within your accounts and your opportunities. There's one main difference between the two. It's a pretty small difference, but I'll show you as we actually go through the tool. But by and large, the tool is pretty much exactly the same. So in order to navigate into the tool, in Classic, as we've got open here, what you do is you go to your account or your opportunity and you find the button at the top of the page. And at the end of this, I will show you how you can access the tool in Lightning as well, but just for the purposes of the actual getting into the tool in here, I'm just going to use this. So if I click on OrgChartPlus, that will then open up the tool and it will come to this full screen view, as you should see in a second. Once you've opened the tool, you get the choice of being able to do a couple of things. You can either create a chart from scratch, or you can open a chart that you've created beforehand. And one of the good things about the tool is that you can actually create as many different charts as you like per account or opportunity. So one of the main use cases for that might be is that if you're looking at a particularly large organization and you wanted to maybe split it up into slightly more manageable chunks, so instead of having one sort of master chart with hundreds of contacts or however many contacts you have, you could maybe have one master chart and then split it up into more manageable chunks, whether it's different geographical locations or different departments. It's completely up to you how you'd want to do that. But as I said, there's no limit to the amount of charts that you can create. The first thing that you'll come to if you haven't created a chart previously is this little screen here, which is obviously this Create Chart section. The first thing you want to do is choose which type of chart you want to create. So there are two different types. We've got a reports to organization chart and a decision tree chart. The difference being that a reports to chart, it's usually going to be used within an account because it looks at the typical organization hierarchy. So with your CEO at the top and so on and so forth. What it also does is it uses the reports to field on the contact record in order to help us pre-populate these charts. So if you don't know what that field is, it's a field on the contact record that allows you to input who that person reports into. And you can get a sort of standard hierarchy view of your contacts in Salesforce as standard, but it doesn't really offer you much. It's just kind of a list of names. Whereas what we do is we try and use that information to help pre-populate these charts. The second option that we've got is this decision tree chart. And so this is more likely going to be seen in an opportunity because it ignores that reporting structure that we've spoken about beforehand. So I say it's more likely going to be used in an opportunity because if you wanted to target somebody within the organization who wasn't necessarily the most senior, you could put them at the top of the chart and have people reporting into them, but without affecting that reporting structure and that reports to field as well. So obviously you're not limited to one reports to being in accounts and decision tree and opportunities. You can use either in both accounts and opportunities. It's completely up to you. You then have the option beneath that to select some initial imports. So what that means is you can bring in some contacts that you've got in the Salesforce database by selecting these different criteria. So you could choose to bring in all your contacts that you have for the account, any related external contacts, so any contacts that are somehow related to that account in Salesforce. And then what you can also do is you can also import your account team. So if you've got some users or colleagues and they've been assigned to the account team in Salesforce, you can bring them in as well. So just for the purposes of this, I'm just going to open up a chart that we've previously created because we've got lots of data within that. So just for this global chart here, I'm just going to click on open, and then that will open the chart. So we've got three different views in OrgChartPlus. We've got this first view here, which is the matrix. We've then got this second view at the top in the left-hand corner, and this is where we navigate into the views. So if I click on OrgChart, we come to this view here. And then finally, we get the molecule, which is this view here, and I'll explain these as we go through. So the matrix is the first view that you come to, and typically this is the view that we would suggest that you start in. By no means is that a necessity, it's completely up to you, but we say that just because this is the view where we get down the information which we're then going to be able to leverage in the next two views. So you want to get as much information as you can down in this view so that we can then reap the benefits when we start to use the tool in the org chart and the molecule. So what I can actually see on this particular view, down here on the left-hand side, we've got client contacts. So these are all contacts within the Salesforce database. Then you can see we've got name and title. And I mentioned that there was one key difference between the tool within accounts and opportunities. And the difference is that in accounts, you have this column, which is title, whereas in an opportunity, you get role. So you get the contact's role within that specific opportunity, because we feel that's much more relevant when you're looking at the org chart for an opportunity. So as I said, so you've got full name and title in accounts, and then full name and role in opportunities. The way that I would bring these contacts in is I use this contacts button at the top here. So if I click on this, we then get a few different options here. So we can either import a contact directly from Salesforce, or we can add a new contact entirely. So if I was to import a contact, this pop-up window appears for us, and we can start to do a few different things. We can either click on account on the left-hand side, which will then bring up all the individuals that I have within that particular account in Salesforce. We can also, if we click on the drop-down next to that, we can choose the account hierarchy as well. So if we wanted to look at the full account hierarchy, we can do that. Or as default, we just have the specific account that we were looking at. You can then obviously search for the contacts by name if you know who you're looking for, or which account they're in as well, because you're not limited to looking at contacts within your specific account. If you wanted to perhaps bring in a consultant that you were working with, perhaps they were PwC, if you wanted to do that, you can bring in those guys as well, because obviously they might be just as relevant in the account or opportunity that you're working on. One of the other things that we can do as well, if you look down here in the bottom right of this pop-up, we have these two options, which are import managers and subordinates. So in terms of what these do, they use the reports to information from that field, which I was talking about earlier, and it allows us to pre-populate the chart with managers and subordinates. So if we thought we wanted to bring in somebody and everybody who we know that reports into them, we could pick on what import subordinates, click on all levels, and then as soon as we click on add, it will bring in the person we've highlighted and then all the people that we know who report into them as well. So it's just a way that we can try and speed things up when we're importing contacts. The other option that I mentioned is to add a new contact entirely. So if I click on that, all that does is it takes me to the standard new contact page in Salesforce. So as you can see here, we've just got the standard new contact page. I could just put in all the information as normal. And then what that does is once you've done that, you just click on save. And then as soon as you do that, this page then disappears and your contact appears down here in the bottom of the list of your contacts. And so that, again, because the tool is native, that writes back to the database, so you don't have to worry about any duplications or having to re-add that contact in the database. Everything that you do here will write back to the database. Another thing that you can do, which is based around these contacts, is you can actually edit these titles within OrgChartPlus. So if I right-click on one of these titles, as I just did, we then get this edit title option. So if I click on that, we can then edit this. We can do it for as many different contacts as we like. And then as soon as I click on save, that information shoots back. And that can be pretty useful just because it allows us to kind of change the titles en masse. So we can change all these titles and click on save, and then all that information shoots back at once. So instead of kind of going in and out of different contact records in Salesforce and kind of changing the title that way, if you wanted to do it a lot more quickly, you could do it in this view as well. So that's kind of our client contacts. So what we can see at the top here is what we call our team members, and we've even got some competitors in there as well. So these team members will typically be Salesforce users in the org that I'm working in. You can include non-Salesforce users, but that's something that your admin would have to do. But the way to bring these guys in is to click on this team button at the top. So what I've got here is I can either bring in a team member, a partner contact, or a competitor. So a team member, if I click on that, we can then do a couple of things. We can either click on all team members, which brings up all the people who have Salesforce licenses within my org. I can either click on account, which if you remember when I was creating the chart, we had the option to bring in the account team. This will be the same list here. So if you wanted to bring in all the people assigned to the account in Salesforce, you could do that here as well. Or alternatively, you could search for the individual by name if you knew who you were looking for. In terms of partner contacts and competitors, it's a very similar process. So if I was to click on import partner contact, what this actually does is it searches through the contact database. So if we wanted to bring in a Salesforce contact as a team member, we would use this section here. And obviously we can search for all, or we can just search for the individual that we're looking for. And then finally, in terms of competitors, it's a very similar process. We can either search for the competitor by name, or I can click on all competitors, and that brings up a list that our admin might have created as well. So once I've brought all the individuals into the chart and maybe some competitors as well, that's when we want to start to look at what we call the attributes. So over here on the left-hand side, we've got influence and opinion. So the influence is talking about how influential this person is within their own organization. And the opinion is talking about what is their opinion of us. So do they like us or not? So in order to change these, we can either do a couple of things. We can either right-click on the contact and go down to the sales attributes section, and I've got influence, none, low, medium, and high, to opinion, none, low, medium, high, or I can go to the attributes section at the top here. So I've got influence and opinion in exactly the same way. One of the things you might just have noticed is this intimacy option is grayed out as well. So that's not available to us for the time being. And that's because the intimacy is these letters over here on the right-hand side. So these, what we call the level of intimacy, essentially is talking about the strength of relationship that exists between our team members and the client contacts. So in order to change these, we have to make sure that we know which relationship we are talking about. So if I click on one of these intersecting squares, now you can see by these highlighted names, we know which relationship we're talking about. So this intimacy option becomes available to us. And what these different things mean is that we've got, so T, which means that this person is a target of ours, but we're not in contact with them. C, there's been some form of contact. R, there's regular contact. And S, there's a strong relationship that exists between the two individuals. So if I click on S, That then populates that square there, so we know that these two have a strong relationship. And it's really important to try and get as much of this information down as possible, because then that is what we're going to be able to leverage as we start to move through the tool. So I think that's pretty much everything on the matrix view. So just to recap, we've got our client contacts down on the left-hand side, which we use this button up here to bring in. We've got team members and competitors at the top, which you use the button next to it. And then we've got our attributes. So we've got influence and opinion down here on the left-hand side, and then intimacy in the middle. So moving on to the org chart, if I click on this, what we can see here is we've got all the contacts that exist in the chart, but they appear in what we call the loading bay at the top. So what we can see here is we've got a bunch of different contacts. We've got all their information within these contact boxes, and all we have to do to start actually populating the chart is to drag and drop these contacts onto this page here beneath. So what we can actually see as well is that some of these boxes have cascading boxes behind them. And what that's telling us is that there's already people who report into them. So there's already a hierarchy there. And that probably means that that reports to field has been populated previously. So in order to look at this, if I've got Alfred Chieftain over here on the left, who's chairman, we can see that he's got a box cascading behind his. So if I drag him down onto the page and I let go, we can straight away see that we already know that Troy reports into him. So that's been pre-built for us. But then in order to actually start populating the chart ourselves, all we have to do is do the same thing. So drag and drop, drag the person over the top of the person they report into, let go of the mouse, and then that populates the relationship. So it's really simple to start doing this. I'm just going to kind of build a quick one out for us. So it's a very sort of intuitive thing to be able to do. You don't have to worry about spacing. It kind of works all that sort of stuff out for you. And then once you've actually built out the chart, you then want to start looking at a few different things. So first of all, what I can see within these boxes, so we've got the influence, which is that attribute, which is the shading behind the contact box. So a lot of shading means that they're very influential, whereas somebody like Leanne doesn't have that much influence, and these guys supposedly don't have any. We've also got the opinion in the middle there, so what is their opinion of us? We've also got an intimacy level as well. And at the moment, what it does is it picks up the highest level of intimacy that this individual has with someone in our organization, but it's not specific about who that person is. If I wanted to change that, however, we can go use this focus area at the top. So if I click on this drop down, we can actually then go and pick on one of these team members. So these are all our team members at the top here. So if I was to click on somebody like Anne, now we can see Anne's relationships. So Anne doesn't have any relationships with the guys on the chart, but if I look up in the loading bay, we can see that these two guys are a target of Anne's. We've got Boris, who she has regular contact with, and so on and so forth. So again, using this focus area, we can be a bit more specific about that level of intimacy. But the default option is this highest intimacy, which is at the top there. So if I click on that, everything will appear as it did beforehand. A couple of other things as well that I can see in some of these boxes. We can see that we've got this notepad in the bottom right-hand corner of some of these boxes, and that is relating to the details behind the individual. So in order to access the details, I double-click on a contact, or I can actually right-click on a contact and select details there. So it's a couple of different ways I can do that. But then what actually I have within this details area is all these things here. So I've got some details surrounding the individual, so things like email and phone number. I've then got which accounts and opportunities they've been in previously and what sort of attributes they've had within those as well. So it's just designed to give you a nice kind of overview of what the history has been, so that you can be sort of better placed in order to maybe speak to them when you come up with them in the future as well. So what that little notepad is actually telling us, so everybody has this contact details section, but this little notepad is telling us that there's some information in these next two tabs. So the contact description tab is a direct mirror of the description field on the contact record. So anything you see here, you'll be able to see there. And if I was to delete anything and save it, you would then be able to see that on the contact record. whereas the account notes is essentially just another area for any sort of information you might think was useful when looking at the tool, but not necessarily on the contact record. So if somebody, you wanted to share some information with somebody else using a tool, this might be where you would come and put that information. There are some other things that we can do, and most of these options are found when we right-click on these contacts. So the first thing was that details, which I've just shown. We can then import by relationship. So again, using that reporting structure and that reports to field, we can bring in all known subordinates that this person has in Salesforce by using this button here. So if I wanted to do that, I could. We can also start to set new tasks and events. So if I was looking at this org chart, maybe I'm a manager, and if I wanted to set a task for one of my guys in order to get in touch with somebody or something like that, I could click on new task. It then opens up a new tab and it takes me straight to the new task page in Salesforce, and then it's already been assigned to that particular contact. So I could obviously assign it to somebody else if I wanted to do that. And then this is all completely standard functionality, so that when I go back into the database, all that information will be there. So as I said, you could do that as a manager, or if you just wanted to set yourself some tasks moving forward, you can do that as well. So it's just a nice way to be able to look at the different or to create an action plan moving forward without leaving the tool itself. And you can do that with events as well, and it's exactly the same functionality. We've then got the sales attributes, much as we've seen before, so we can start to build those in. We've then got this relationship option. So these are actually the informal relationships that might exist within the organization that I'm looking at. So if I thought that somebody knew someone or influenced someone or one of these, so let's say that this person socializes, so Alfred socializes with someone, I'd click on socializes, click on that person, so let's say it's Troy, and then that will populate that informal relationship in there for us as well. So again, it's just a nice way to be able to look at those relationships, because often they can be just as important politically as those formal relationships we've got as well. Again, if I go back to right-clicking, we've just gone through that relationship option. We've then got this color option as well. So what we've done as a demonstration is we've picked out a few colors and we've given them labels. So you can see we've got colors here and we've given them some roles. But what you guys will see most likely, if you haven't done any customization, is that you'll see just a palette of different colors. And then what that allows you to do is it allows you to bring in these different colors and give the contact box a colored border in order to sort of give you a quick view about different people for different reasons. So as I said, we've got roles here. So if I want to be able to pick out easily who our champion was in the account, I'd click on champion. That would then give them the colored border, and we can see then pretty quickly who that person is and what their role is. But as I said, what you guys will see is just a palette of different colors, so you can choose what those mean as on an individual basis, rather than having a consistent kind of labeling throughout the organization. The last two options that we've got in this section, we've got layout. So if I wanted to change the layout of the org chart, I could do that. So if I wanted to display the subordinates vertically, I could click on vertical, and then it does that in there. But typically people will probably keep that as horizontal, just because that's the way a typical org chart would look. And then you've also got the ability to show and hide any fields in the contact box as well. These two options down here are pretty useful as well, because what it allows you to do is you can actually bulk delete contacts from the OrgChartPlus as well. So I can delete a contact from the chart specifically, or from the Salesforce account as a whole. And in terms of bulk deleting, if I wanted to delete all of these individuals, I could just lasso over the top of them, right click, and then I click on delete from Salesforce account. That will then delete them from the database entirely. So again, instead of going in and out of the database and having to fiddle about in there, you can actually just use OrgChartPlus to do that for you. One of the things that we can also do, which I haven't shown yet, is we can actually include our team members on the matrix as well. So if I pop back into the matrix quickly, and let's keep with Richard, and if I right click on Richard, we have the ability to show him on the org chart. So if I click on that, go into the org chart, we can see now in the loading bay, we've got this green contact box here. So if I bring Richard onto the page, You can't obviously put them within the hierarchy, but you can leave them here. And then if I right click on Richard, we then have the ability to enter the informal relationships that he might have as well. So if I thought that Richard was a supporter of George here, I would then click on George. And much in the same way as it did internally, you can also build those arrows between team members and client contacts. So again, completely up to you if you wanted to do that, but just to give you an idea, that is something that you can do in the tool as well. One of the things that we try and do as much as we can, and it's something that we advise our customers to do as well, is to share these org charts with the organization who you're looking at. And we say that because it's a much more fruitful way of getting to know about what the organization looks like, because they're just going to tell you whether you've got something wrong or whether you've got something right, and you can very quickly move it around and start to kind of get the correct hierarchy in place. But one of the things that you might not want to do is you might not want to show somebody that we think these two socialize with each other, or that this person doesn't like us, and so on and so forth. So what we can do is if I click on chart at the top of the page here, we've got some admin at the top here, and we've got some exporting capabilities, which I'll go through in a moment. But then we've also got what we call the privacy mode. So if I click on that, it then just temporarily hides all the information. It doesn't delete any of it. Again, it just hides it, so that if you wanted to take this into a meeting, you can do so without having to worry about annoying anyone or anything like that. But it doesn't delete all the info, it just temporarily hides it. So if I go down and click on privacy mode again, all the information comes back as it was. You may have noticed just underneath that, we've got what we call a show legend. So if I click on that, just to give you an idea, it brings up the legend, so we know exactly what's going on within the tool. So we don't have to worry about kind of not knowing what any of these icons mean. If I wanted to have the legend opened, if I was relatively new to the tool, I can do that as well. So that's pretty much everything in terms of the org chart view. So we spoke about the dragging and dropping, the right-click menu, which we've got here, the details, all the way through to the relationships and so on and so forth. So hopefully that gives you a good idea about how you can actually start to populate this view. So the final view that we've got is the molecule, and the legend will stay there if we've got it open. And what we see is, so it uses the information from the previous two views in order to pre-populate this for us. So we don't have to worry about dragging and dropping or anything like that. This will just populate itself. So what we've got as standard is we've got the highest intimacy in the middle, which essentially is us as an organization. And then as you start to move out, the relationships get weaker and weaker. So you've got all the S's in the middle here, so all the people we have strong relationships with. And then as you move out, they start to get weaker. So you can see we've got some regular contacts, and then even just contact over here on the right-hand side. You can choose how many people you want to display within this view by using this show area. And then what you can also do is you can make anybody within the chart the center, and you can see how you can maybe leverage their relationships. So one of the things that you might do if I'm looking at this is you might try and find someone who's of particular interest. So if I'm looking at this, I can see somebody like Boris down here is we supposedly have regular contact with him. He's very influential, but he doesn't like us for whatever reason. So he might be somebody that we need to win his support back. So in order to do that, what I might do is I'll go up to focus. I can either pick on one of the team members, or if I scroll down, I could then go and click on Boris. That, as you can see here, puts him straight in the middle of the view, and then it builds his relationships for us. So now what we can see is, we can see that these green boxes are particularly close to Boris. So, and then the client contacts are a little bit further out. So in order to set up an introduction maybe, or to win a support back, these three individuals here who are part of our team might be the perfect guys in order to maybe set up an introduction, or to just basically to help us so that we can put our best foot forward. But as I said, the default option, if you want to take it back, is just highest intimacy at the top there. So if I click on that, everything appears as it was beforehand as well. So I think in terms of functionality of the tool, that's pretty much everything that we've got. So I'll just show you briefly now how you can actually export these different views. So you can export all three views, but I'll use the org chart view because typically that's the view that people are going to use. So if I'm doing this, I do this, by clicking on the chart button at the top here, where I've got some admin at the top if I wanted to create new charts and things like that. But I've then got these four different options here. So I can either print the chart. So if I click on print chart, it brings us to this view here where I can fiddle about with the layout. I could change the paper from portrait to landscape, I could then even change the size of the paper, so on and so forth. I could also then print a legend if I wanted to. So if I click on that, as you can see here, now we've got the legend in the bottom left-hand corner. And then obviously if I click print, I'm away. The other options that I have, so this first export option, all these three options download to your computer. So if you wanted to download it to your computer and then share it via email or something like that, you can do that in this section here. So the three different options are you can either export it as an image, a Word document, or a PowerPoint presentation. So if in terms of an image, if I click on that, it brings us to this view here. Again, I can choose the size of the image. I can show a legend. I can also basically then just give the image a name, click on save, and then it will just download to my computer. The other options, so with Word and PowerPoint, they're pretty similar processes. So I'm just going to use export to presentation for the purposes of this. And what I can do is, which is really cool, is I can actually choose a PowerPoint that I've already been working on and input the org chart straight into there. So if I was to click on choose file, it opens up the finder on your computer, whatever that happens to be. You can then go and pick a PowerPoint that you've already been working on, select which slide you wanted the org chart to appear at, and then click on show legend, and then you can export it straight into there. Or if you just wanted to select a blank presentation, you can do that as well. So if I click on show legend, blank presentation, click on OK, and then what it does is it just shoots the PowerPoint straight out. As you can see down here in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, it's just downloaded pretty quickly for us there as well. And the cool thing about that is if I've just opened up PowerPoint. So this is an example of the way it exports itself. And the cool thing about this is that it's actually still editable within the PowerPoint format. So not necessarily the dragging and dropping, but in terms of kind of editing text, you can change somebody's name. So if the chairman changed, you could change their name. If their title changed, you could change that. You can delete relationship lines if I wanted to. You can move the legend around again if I wanted to. It's still pretty editable. So it's not a flat image file. You can actually still edit all of this, which is quite a nice feature. So you're not kind of limited to having to go back into the tool as well. The other exporting options that I had, so just to recap those, we had the print and then the export of image, Word, and PowerPoint directly to my computer. But then the second option, export as attachment, is the same three options, but instead what happens is they attach themselves to the Salesforce record, whether it's the account or opportunity. So let's say we go for attach as image this time. So if I open this up, I've got, let's say, test OCP is the image name. I'm showing the legend. If I click on save, what it will do is, as we can see here, so the image was now attached to your account. So if I click on OK, and let's say I want to go back into the account, I'm just going to open that up in a new tab. What we will then be able to see is if I scroll down to the notes and attachments section of the account or opportunity, we can then see here that we've got our test OCP image waiting for us. So if I wanted to share an image or a PowerPoint or whatever document it might be, I can then put it on the account so that everybody who has access to the account can go and have a look and view it there and download it for themselves. So instead of having to email it to everyone or anything like that, you can just put it straight on the account so everybody within your Salesforce has visibility of it. The last option that I've got is export as web page URL. So if I click on that, it just simply gives us a link that we can copy and then send to people so that it just gives them a direct link into the tool as well. So I think that's pretty much everything in terms of the demo. One of the things that I would really ask somebody to do as well. Actually, sorry, just before I go on to that, I'm just going to show you how you can access the tool in Lightning as well, just in case any of you guys are using Lightning. So I'll open up Salesforce. I shall switch to the Lightning experience, because there's a slightly different way that you can access the tool, which we think is quite cool moving forward, so that if you haven't moved to Lightning, this might be something you want to do when you do, or if you have, then please feel free to get in touch with us and we can help you out with getting this set up. But if I open up the account in Lightning, one of the things that we can do is we can create an org chart specific tab at the top here. So we've got our related lists, we've got our details, and then if I click on org chart, we can actually have the tool embedded within the page itself. So if I just wait for that to load, the tool works in a completely the same way. I've got all the information as I had done previously, but except it's just within the account page. So it kind of improves visibility a bit. And you can obviously click on full screen if you wanted to make it full screen. Or if you wanted to use the button or the equivalent of the button in Lightning, you can click on this drop down on the right, and then you can find OrgChartPlus there, and then that will open it in the same way that it does in Classic as well. So yeah, so thanks for that. And so if anybody wants to know a bit more about that or anything like that, please feel free to get in touch or send me an email. I'm more than happy to go through that on a one-to-one basis or something like that. But as I said, I think that kind of rounds out the demo of the tool. But one of the things that I will ask very nicely, I hope, is that one of the things that we're really keen on getting from you guys is feedback. So if I could ask you, if you have a spare 5 minutes, and it only takes 5 minutes, I promise, if you could just go onto the App Exchange and write us a review on the App Exchange, that would be really, really helpful. So in order to do that, I'll just show you very, very quickly kind of how easy it is. So you open up the App Exchange. So if you just search for OrgChartPlus, there you go, we even come up there and suggested. And then if you look in the list, hopefully we should appear somewhere here. Yep, so we're at the top. If you open that listing up, then what you can see is you have this review section here. So as I said, we're really, really keen on getting feedback from you guys. So if you could possibly write us a review, that would be awesome. But again, if you want to get in touch with us about something that you're not sure on, please feel free to get in touch with us as well. So what I've actually done as well is if you look in the handouts section of the webinar on the right-hand side, I've put the user guide in there as well. So if people wanted to download that OrgChartPlus user guide, please go and have a look in there. And I'll put my email up on the screen now, just again. So if you wanted to get in touch with me, please feel free to give me an email, and I'm more than happy to set up a call one-on-one or anything like that. Or even if you've got any ideas for what you think we could go through in future sessions. So thanks very much for joining. As I said, please feel free to get in touch, or if not, just good luck using the tool.